on-screen Jenga.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Thursday night again. Welcome along to our Blether live. We've got two guests tonight. I think. Yeah. Is this the first time we've had?
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah.
Oh no! If you think we didn't make sense with three people, God knows what we're going to be like before.
Yeah, could be a struggle. Yeah.
So no secret. Tonight, who we've got? You can see from the bottles behind us. If you're unfamiliar with the label, it's Gregor Hannah and Paul McKendricl joining us from Lady of the Glen. One of our I would say best-selling, certainly increasing in popularity amongst indie bottles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good evening, Phil. Nice to see you back top of the tree, first in after 2 weeks of slacking.
2 weeks ago, got beat by Neil and Ulrich last week.
I know. So tonight we've got indie bottlers. So hopefully we'll get a good chat with the guys, and a little exclusive wee sneak peek into the new range. I think we've managed to get some advanced tastings ahead of us. So we'll have a wee taste of that. And I know generally we don't really look at promoting the products, but we've got an opportunity tonight for the release, which I think the guys will confirm is like next week when you come on. So it could be you hear it here first, which we couldn't really pass up. But don't worry about. We will kind of speak to the guys about them and follow usual Blether protocol. But it'll be interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. They've got some absolutely outstanding looking and smelling drams, so I can't wait to get stuck into those. And like I say, I think available next week. So what have you got in your glass just now, Russell?
I've gone for one of the new release. I've got a lovely little Glen Murray and then Amarone cask, which I've just poured. I'm hoping it complements my macaroni and cheese that I've just had. So I'm looking forward to having that as my wee pudding. So this is part of the new release. Really quite exciting. And I've saved a wee drop as well, because we always get generous samples from.
Absolutely. Well, I've gone for one of the earlier releases, the 13-year-old inch Gower.
Yeah.
Is a wee palate cleanser. I think we had this on the tasting we had with Paul.
I'm pretty sure we did at the start of the year. Yeah, absolute belter.
So an absolutely dynamite dram. So this is a refill sherry cask at 55.8%. And this, not your classic sherry cask color. It's a really light one, which goes to show that color isn't everything. It's all in the taste. And as I always say, we're not here to speak to me and Russell. We're here to speak to the guys. So let's get them on screen, and hopefully we can get them up straight away. Here we go. Welcome along, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight.
How you doing?
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no problem at all. Always a pleasure. It's great. I think we've been chasing you for a wee while, and now we've finally got you on screen. So no escape.
Well, unless my internet connection fails, I know Virgin are meant to be doing some works, so you never know what can happen with those guys at the.
Okay.
Yeah, two kids downstairs on devices as well, which tend to eat up the bandwidth, but so far so good. So.
It's great that you're getting your excuses in early. So if you just cut it.
Well, that's the worst thing we have to excuse tonight. Then we're off on the right foot. That's all.
Absolutely. So I mean, you guys as a company, it's quite young, isn't it? You haven't been around. Relatively speaking, you're a fairly new company in terms of the indie whiskey bottler. So what was it, Gregor, that got you into setting up your own company in whiskey, and what was the lead up to that?
Right. Well, I started it. It'll be 10 years ago next year. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary.
10 years ago.
Yeah. So I started the business when I was 25.
Right.
And so originally my original idea came from when I used to work in sports stores in Stirling. So I don't know if anyone's ever been to Stirling when it was a hip and attractive place for going out for drinks.
I've got a funny story to say about Stirling, but we'll leave that till later on. If you remind me.
So it was at Stirling that I found out about single cask whiskey. That, to be honest, the bar I worked in, if anyone's ever actually been to Sportsters, would be well aware that there's, had nothing in touch with whiskey at all. I think the only whiskey we had was Jack Daniels and Canadian Club, and the Canadian Club used to gather dust. So we used to get guys from the oil rigs who would come in, and they knew a whole bunch about single cask stuff. So that piqued a bit of an interest, and I always wanted to enter the whiskey industry. So I kind of managed to acquire some single casks eventually. What happened is I took out a bank loan. By this point, I was working for the bank. So I took out a bank loan to help with my commute into Edinburgh because I was staying in Fife. And I used that loan to buy 2 casks, a 1987 cask of Inverurie Gordon and a sherry cask of Ben Rinnes. So, and I also had to create the brand. So did that. Pretty much took ages to sell anything. Funnily enough, it's a bit of a tangent, but I do all my accountancy software through Free Agent, so I can see how the business performed in 2012. So the overall profit was like, turnover wise was about $2.5 grand. Loss was about -5. So it was pretty abysmal year. And it's only in the past 4 or 5 years that the business has really started to grow. And last year, Paul came in during COVID, which was really an ideal time for a brand ambassador to start any job, being that he can't contact anyone, go to any shops, go to any festivals. But we've persevered, and I think we're doing quite well now. We've got our own bottling hall, where we do the entire outrun for this year. Every single cask has been hand bottled by us, cask strength. So we've selected it and we've managed it ourselves. So a big pat on the back to us for that, because it was a big challenge.
Yeah, that must have been a huge risk for you, just to go out and think, right, let's start from the start with two casks. So at that point, you buy the 2 casks. What was your vision for getting them bottled? Did you have that already lined up, or did you have to was it by cask and kind of go on the hop all the way through? Or?
To be honest, I was very naive. It was probably a terrible business decision to buy 2 casks. I thought I was already counting the money by when I got the bottles, and I didn't really account for things like duty, VAT, and then when the invoices started coming out, I was like, man, this is a terrible idea. And it was only through, like, fortunately getting exported to Germany, like randomly got picked up by an exporter there. And they were really keen on the brand, and they bought about half the stock. So I only had to sell about the rest to shops in the UK, which was quite easy. But that distributor was so keen that they actually used a system called the duty drawback system. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but essentially it means that they bought all the goods with the price of the VAT, the duty, and then we had to go through a process of them claiming it back so they'd get a refund. So it showed how much it meant to them to do that. Yeah,
it's a good kind of show of faith from them.
Yeah,
that brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the boldness paid off with that. They kind of seen your commitment to it and thought, you know what, we believe that this is good stuff. Let's commit.
Yeah, I mean, from then I did well. I managed to win support from the Prince's Trust that gave me another loan, and then Scottish Edge, that was another loan. And last year, all the loans were paid off. So the business became debt free last year, which was great for me, because I'm the sort of person who's really uncomfortable with any form of debt. I don't even like using an overdraft. So that was a really big milestone for myself.
So at what point did it feel like this was definitely going to happen? I mean, I guess big gamble at the start, and then realizing, gosh, Bill's coming in. At what point did it kind of think, actually, you know what, this is going to work?
Well, it certainly didn't happen after the first few casks, because the problem I was having I could only buy casks when the last one had sold out. So you were always running out of momentum as well.
Yeah.
And you need momentum to keep it going, to keep people interested. So I would say it started really happening when I established contact with really solid sources who I could buy continually from. So some of the bigger distillers I was able to build relationships with, and I was able to buy larger parcels, and I was, re-racking stuff. So realistically, I would say that the business only became like from a lifestyle hobby business to like a proper business in the last 4 years. So yeah, it did take a while. And as anyone who's ever ran a business, you guys will know the biggest challenge is having the confidence to think, well, I need to earn at least $1,000 a month to pay my wage. And, sometimes it's not as easy as that, because it takes you a few months to sell a cask. And then, yeah, had to get that all sorted.
I know when we set up the shop the first few years, there was some months when we didn't even get a wage because it all went back in to the business. You've undoubtedly been in that position yourself as well. But it's great now that you've got the ability and to take on somebody like Paul, who is, don't take this as offence, Paul, but you've been around the whiskey for a wee bit longer, a wee while now as a brand ambassador.
Yeah, I started when I was 25 as well, and that was just last year. Now I'm 39.
Done a lot in a year.
That's what happens when you work with Gregor, And yeah, no, I sort of, it took me that long to get into the industry, I suppose. I see that as more of a compliment, Mike, that I've actually, been around for a while now, so it's sort of achieved what I was out to get. But yeah, a few different companies and over the years, and it was always, whiskey was a hobby and a passion, like Gregor as well. It was always like, okay, I enjoy this stuff. Can I do more with it? What can I do? And always had a kind of passion for presenting and talking about whiskey as well as drinking it. The fun of enjoying a few drams, but then talking about it as well. So, the idea of being like a brand ambassador or some sort of ownership of a brand that you can facilitate some travel as well, which is always a perk of the job. So, but no, I really feel like I've landed on my feet now as well, and obviously you can tell from Gregor explaining the humble beginnings and your nice words about us being in a good place just now. It's certainly good to be part of. But yeah, so I started my whiskey journey properly in retail as well, with a job at the whiskey shop, which convenient enough, being based in the Central Belt, which was a fantastic place to actually learn how to talk about whiskey to people who don't necessarily understand as much about whiskey as you, which of course is a big part of the job. But it was a fantastic stepping stone into the industry proper, with the Creative Whiskey Company when the opportunity came around in 2015. And just happened to be in the right place at the right time for that. David Stark, who owned the company at the time, also a very small operation, hands-on, doing everything by hand as well in terms of labelling and bottling, was in a position looking to expand as well. Mm-hmm. Take a little bit of the heat off himself as well in terms of what's expected of you as an owner of a whiskey brand, travelling, etc., with children growing up, and I'm finding that now as well. It's an interesting juggling act as well, trying to balance this. Well, not in the last 18 months anyway, but sort of jet style life with trying to have a family as well. But eventually, David decided he wanted to sell the company back in 2018. So therefore, I was back out on my backside again, looking for a job, and found a role with Murray McDavid, which is, I think, when I met you guys for the first time.
Our first dealings with you there was Murray McDavid. So
yeah, just following up leads in the area. But interestingly, at that time when I was looking for a job, that's when I first met Gregor and actually spoke to Gregor about a role, like the role I've got just now. But as I say, going back nearly 2 years now when we were speaking, we were both in quite a different place. Myself, especially, when you find yourself looking for a job, you tend to go for the the safer option. I don't know. I can't think of a better way to put that, but bigger company at the time as well. So
to be fair, that was terrible as well. Like, I think I was saying to Paul, like, "Oh, you'll need to sell this many bottles a month to make this work," and it was just totally ridiculous. Like, it was like probably the worst. Sounded like a total Del boy. Like, "Oh, you'll need to sell was it like 60 bottles a month or something? If you don't do it, then you can't get paid." And terrible. It was. I would have run for the hills with Paul, but yeah, it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that appealed to me more than anything was that, I mean, part of the reason why I really enjoyed my role with the Creative Whisky Company was because, you know, as I mentioned, you know, whisky is a hobby and a passion, and I'm enthusiastic about it before it is actually a job. So when I was handed the keys to a whisky warehouse with 250 casks to choose from, and you know, but that whole concept of being at that grassroots level really, you know, it was like a kid in a candy shop, you know. And so when I met Gregor and found out his kind of business model and obviously ideas for the future, there was a lot of things that were appealing to me in that regard. And also being part of you know, I could see the potential. The potential was there, and it's obviously very attractive to be part of a project that's going places that you can then, you know, be part of that process of taking it to the next level. So, but anyway, for whatever reason, it didn't work at the time. But then we crossed paths once again 18 months later, and both, I think, were in a better place at that time in terms of, you know, where I was, my confidence in my own ability, and, you know, making it work, basically, you know, hitting those monumental targets that Gregor was setting out, you know, you know, setting up that distributor on Mars, you know, that we had to. But no, it was definitely right place, right time. I think, you know, it's easy to look back and say, if I joined Gregor back 2 years ago, you know, we would have been where we are right now 2 years quicker. But I think Gregor, well, I hope Gregor would agree. I don't think we would be. I think we're far better placed. So, as he mentioned, I joined right at the start of lockdown, and had my work cut out as a brand ambassador to justify my existence. But of course, as you guys have known and your customers will know, we've been more than happy to get involved with online tastings and things. And, you know, technology has been an amazing help to be able to allow us to do what we set out to do, you know, and take it to the next level, which I think we're certainly on the right path to do that now.
Would it be in a kind of twisted way a bit of a benefit to be able to do this from home, or at least online, so you're maybe able to access more markets in a virtual world that wasn't here 2 years ago? Do you think that's maybe helped Lady Glen get to new people through the virtual tastings and things like that, whereas maybe it wasn't so easy to access new markets or new countries before?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know yourself how you reach, you know, the ability to be able to ship some samples and then be in someone's living room on the night before. It certainly helps. It's been welcome, obviously, but certainly have missed live in-person tastings. And, you know, there's definitely a connection there when you're in person, and I don't think I appreciated it fully until it was taken away. You know, even being at whisky festivals, etc., you have that engagement, the body language, things like that you can get your personality across better than staring at a laptop screen, you know, which is, you know, it's certainly a challenge, but as I say, better than nothing, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, I think the whisky world has learned there is other ways other than jet setting around the globe and, you know, collecting your air miles to be able to access and present your case. Markets.
Perfect example there. Sam England, one of our kind of regulars on a lot of our Zoom tastings, and I'm pretty sure he was on the Lady of the Glen one that we did at the start of the year, Paul. Just saying, really enjoyed the Zoom tastings that he's done with yourself. Thinks you're doing a fantastic job. And Sam's down. I think we had this discussion about Barnsley. I'm pretty sure that was the night we spoke about Barnsley. And Sam did say that Barnsley wasn't the most sort of beautiful place in the planet, but was not having us dismissing it either. I think he's still in Yorkshire. I think he's around about maybe Leeds or something now. But you know, the audience from our point of view, getting out and about doing tastings with you guys across the whole of the UK from your living room, I thought was a fantastic part of Zoom and one of the benefits of the lockdown.
Yeah, I would just follow that up. Like, I don't think anyone's under any assumptions that we're going to go back to not having these virtual meetings anymore. But what I would say is that when I source casks, I would much prefer to go and visit the bodegas, and I'm sure people are the same when they purchase whiskey. They like to actually feel the story and the environment that's around it. So I still think that there's I mean, I wouldn't want to have a virtual meeting with someone who runs a cooperage, because like, what's the point in that? Because you're not really getting a sense of it. So
yeah.
It's more about I think what the Zoom kind of world's given us is a greater access to likes of yourself. So to me, I think there's more of an audience out there who's now going to come and see, you know, come and go to festivals, come and go to distilleries, go to warehouses, go to places where they can actually go and see stuff that might not have done before.
So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've certainly done a lot more with people in Sweden and other countries. So obviously, and I know that there's tastings happening in Sweden where they're getting, like, I don't know, people involved in the trade on almost like two members of the trade a month. So there's no other way that it's not like they would have like some sort of conveyor belt of these whiskey industry people arriving 2 a month for tastings, whereas virtual tastings, you can do that because they can do it from home.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm hoping that when it comes back to just me and Russell in the tasting room, that people will still come and join us, and it's not, we're not expecting a Paul or a Billy Walker or someone every week. It's like, guys, it's just me and Russell. So hopefully, I think the industry has adapted really well to it, but they've also prepped really well for reopening. We were up at Speyside doing a tour, both Russell and I, over the last couple of weeks. And the difference in a lot of the distilleries, the visitor centres, I think they've really upped the game. Cardew has got a brand new visitor centre. Aberlour's got a beautiful tasting room and shop. It's all done new, and they're all kind of looking forward to people coming back in and delivering that experience. So I think they've been quite wise in what they've done. They've kind of upped the game for everything. Because I think people are desperate to get over to visit the country and get into warehouses and get into still houses and do that. Because I think all we've done over the last 18 months is whet that appetite, and hopefully, you know, next year things will open again and people will start having the confidence to come and visit. Is there plans for Lady Glen that we can get visits, or people can come and visit you guys, or is there scope for that where you are?
Well, we're looking at opening up a maturation site in the unit next to ours, and maybe that'll open up that. But I don't really think. I mean, I get a lot of folk in the trade who want to arrange a visit to see our warehouse, and I always try and put it off because, to be honest, it's a working bottling hall, so it looks like a working bottling hall. No one's going to want to see like cardboard boxes lying about the place and casks lying on the floor, and you know, the staff aren't trained to deal with the public either. If you meet the guys in the warehouse, we didn't recruit them because of their charming ability to tell stories. You know, these aren't tour guides. I mean, they're really good guys, but you know, I wouldn't need them to escort my mum around the warehouse. Put it that way.
We'd quite like to see how you stack your cardboard, because we're perennially having to pile cardboard up as well, like I said.
One of the best tours I've had actually was at the Knockdhu distillery, and we went up on the off chance. We parked in the car park and we just had a dram of Annick in the car park and talked about it. So this is a group of me and my friends, and one of the distillery workers came out and we thought, here, we're going to get chucked out and moved on. And he was just one of the stillmen. He just says, look, yeah, why are you sitting outside having a dram? This is January the 2nd or something, freezing cold, snowing outside. He goes, why don't you come in and warm up? We'll show you around. And honestly, it was probably one of the best tours I've ever done. You know, just one of the workmen, not trained in anything, And since then, I've always had a love for Knock Two. So you never know who's going to be interested to speak to these guys. You know, the actual nuts and bolts of whiskey.
Yeah, well, we'll speak to Gavin. I'm sure he's been called worse than a nut before, but certainly, you know, it's like trying to get blood out of stone, getting them to make a cup of tea, a cup of coffee for you. To be honest, I'm not great at making cups of coffee either. Gregor always criticises that I don't stir it enough, you know. So that's what we resort to, you know. So you can come in and visit us. I mean, I suppose, like Gregor was saying, there's nothing to see, but then that's maybe us with our seeing the place every day, of course, and it is an interesting thing. But I mean, if you're passing, give us a shout, and if we're around, then you know we can show you. But
I think the thing is what you guys are doing. I mean, a lot of guys who enjoy whiskey who don't own a distillery, the prospect of maybe doing something is owning a whiskey shop, owning a whiskey bar, or maybe owning a independent bottling company, and these are things that are possibly prospects that people would have. There's loads of us dream. It's like, you know, we all watch football. We all dream about playing a football, but we end up just mucking about in the park, and that's us going to the pub for a dram. But there are lots of people who I think would be interested in how to go about doing it. But I guess you've got to have the right people, and then again, you don't want too many people out there either. I mean, it's you know, there's a finite market, I suppose, at the end of the day for the amount of companies that are going to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, our site is incredibly popular with train spotters. We get the Flying Scotsman goes by quite regularly.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we get a whole bunch of woolly hat-eyed people with little binoculars and little notepads coming out and standing on the bridge. So I suppose if we did go up to them with little drams, a little tray of drams,
there's a tasting angle for you.
You've got a ready-made basket there. Just get the timetable and Flying Scotsman and make sure you're there before every day. There you go.
Yeah,
it's a good marketing pitch.
Desperate time.
We just had a question in from Gus Rennie, who's watching, asking Gregor if you've got any new Tam Do bottlings coming.
I do not have any Tam Do bottlings coming at the moment, but you know, it could happen. Yeah, stranger things have happened. I mean, the cask that I got, I think I split it among 2 octaves and I released a hogshead. So, yeah, these casks are about, so it could happen, but nothing concrete.
You just have to keep your eye out for that one.
Yeah, just talking about casks, Gregor, is there a particular kind of cask that you like to work with? Have you got a favourite, shall we say?
So, without, it used to be, I always liked Bunnahabhain casks. I always find that the spirit was always really good. The more I've sort of worked in the industry, the more I've got a feel that distillate's always great, but it can depend on what cask you've received the spirit in and how much patience you've got if you are re-racking it. But generally speaking, I've never really had a bad Bunnahabhain. So Bunnahabhain over 10 years old, I always find it's always really, really easy to sell. I've always had a good source for Bunnahabhain casks as well, because they always seem to get second fill sherry butts, and they're just always phenomenal because they've got a tremendous balance to them, so they don't ever overpower the spirit. We've probably in the past 12 months released more sherried Bunnahabhains, which have always been really big sellers as well, and people have always enjoyed. But if you've ever tried any secret islands that we've done prior to that, more than likely those were Bunnahabhains, especially if they weren't octaves.
Yeah. It's funny talking about Bunnahabhain, and yeah, those who have followed our releases, especially over the last, well, I say 18 months, they'll know that we've bottled a lot of Bunnahabhain, and actually, you know, it just makes me laugh, because I'm the same as Gregor. If I had to pick a whiskey that's probably amongst, well, certainly in my top 5, probably my top 3, it would be Bunnahabhain as well. So it's always a pleasure to work with. But it takes me back.
In general, Paul, or just the ones that you work with, but just in general, Bunna would be in your top 3.
General, as a make, I just think it's wonderful, the variety you get, and you know, I know distillers and bigger bottlers, you know, who are bottling multiple casks, the key they want is consistency. But and they do regard Bunnahabhain as consistent. But I mean, Gregor will back me up. But all the Bunnahabhains we brought in and worked with have all been unique in a way, you know, still tied to the make. And I think that's just why it's such a wonderful spirit to work with. But it makes me laugh because again, I remember. Way back to last March when I met Gregor in the pot still in Glasgow before lockdown was a thing, before you know you couldn't go to pubs and things like that. We had a couple of beers and a couple of drams and a kebab on the way home talking about the role, and I was just asking questions and things like that. And one of the things I was asking about, you know, do's and don'ts, and I remember it well. You know, even after the many drinks. One of Gregor's main rules was try not to bottle the same make within the same calendar year. Yet within the last 2 years, we're probably, I mean, Gregor can correct me, but I think maybe 5 casks of Bunnahabhain through Lady of the Glen in the last 5 years. And that's just testament to how much we love the stuff. You know, we break a rule. We'll break our number one rule to accommodate Bunnahabhain.
I like the sound of your interview there, Paul.
Sorry, Russell?
I like the sound of your interview there. I had to send a video into Mike. I didn't get taken to a whiskey bar and given a kebab on the way home.
I didn't expect to get a kebab. I thought it was going to be a quick chat. But yeah, we both charmed each other. Maybe.
That was my quick chat, you know.
Yeah. The other spirit I would say is Kalila. Since we've got the warehouse, I honestly said we've never had a bad Kalila. And when I speak to other people, other bottlers, they're all in agreement. They can try Kalila like 5-6-year-old, compare it to 12. It's such a dependable spirit. You can work with it in different types of casks, different styles of casks, and it's always really great. I mean, I would love to do a vertical Kalila tasting. I don't think it'd be bad. I think it'd be great if you tried it in different vintages, different cask styles. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah, and I personally always used to turn my nose up a little bit at Indie Kalila because every independent bottler would do a Kalila, and I just thought it was because they churned out so much spirit. But when you try them and you take, you know, there's a reason that so many guys pick it. It's because it's very rarely you get a bad one, and they always do really well. And there's a variety of casks as well. That'll, you know, you get quite often. You get a red wine cask or a sherry cask or a bourbon cask, and it just works in every single one. So yeah, I was very wrong to kind of think, well, it's just because it must be cheap, but it must be, you know, ample supply. But guys are picking it because it tastes great.
Yeah, the last is in the Cypriot cask. It's fantastic, and completely different.
I was going to counter your argument with casks that I have used that I wouldn't release, because there's the distillate makes that I've found to be quite challenging. Maybe it's because of how they arrive on the market, but I've always found that Dalmore is quite notorious to get, you know, market equipped, so to speak.
Okay.
I don't know if just because of the casks that I've seen as an independent bottler, I've always found that they always need quite a lot of work. So I've never released a Dalmore. I think the cost of Dalmore has always been much higher, and they always need a lot of work. Maybe because the casks themselves require, well, you need good quality casks, and maybe they've just not used that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I always get asked from clients in China or anywhere, can you release some Dalmore?
Okay.
But
I love the meme. There was a meme that came out in the whiskey Facebook circles. It came out, and it was it's the pictures. There's a single cask coming. Open the drawbridge.
There's whiskey on the way.
There's whiskey on the way.
The second picture says open the drawbridge.
Dalmore, close the drawbridge. It's single cask strength. Open the drawbridge a little bit. So I dare say you're not the only one who has that feeling about it.
Yeah, could be an example, and I don't want to speak for distillers and their programs, but obviously the investment they've made in Dalmore as a single malt brand, and of course we know fine well with Jura as well. They've spent a lot of money on their wood policy and re-racking a lot, and I dare say Dalmore as well. But perhaps those casks that they deem as being not up to the standard quality, whatever you want to call it, of their single malt brand, and they wouldn't be the only one that those are the casks that end up in the market. Obviously, the market that we're operating from in terms of sourcing casks. So who knows? But certainly, I mean, we know fine well working with single casks that you cannot judge a book by its cover. Absolutely not. We all have distilleries where we've had a few, that we would maybe say it's not my favourite whiskey, and we wouldn't be human if we didn't then sort of draw an opinion of that distillery from that. That's just in our nature. But we see it every day almost, where expectations are challenged because of the unique aspects of single casks. And I think, Gregor and I always have a laugh because we've working so closely together in a small team, and we, within our whiskey experiences in our life so far, have made these impressions, consciously or subconsciously. And there's a few distillates where we look at each other and say, "You what? You like what?" And I'm racking my brain trying to think, but I think the most recent one was Glen Talkers.
Yeah, we do have a good laugh about Glen Talkers. Yeah.
Glen Talkers, I've always enjoyed Glen Talkers, and I don't. Again, and I'm not saying I enjoy it because the way the whiskey's produced. It just happens the ones I've tried, and of course, being a distillery that doesn't have a core range, you rely on independent bottlers and the choice of casks, and I've always enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Gregor gave me that look like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He's waiting for the punchline, and I was like, I'm not straight face. I like Glen Talkers, and it just, it divided the room, even though there only was two of us in that room. But it's still, there was a big iron curtain in the room for the rest of the day.
I tend to think Glen Talkers is like that raffle prize that no one really wants, but you've won it, so you're like, oh, thanks very much. I've not had one that's really blew me away.
But it's a funny distillate. I mean, Paul, you might. I don't know if you understand why you like it, but to me, it's one of the whiskies that actually bizarrely tastes like a distillery. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it seems to taste kind of chemically, but in an okay way. Whereas your other whiskies, you get all the other flavors you get from the wood and the fruits and the vanillas and the chocolates and all that. But Glen Talkers has that, but there's that chemical bit to me still there, and I don't mind it. I quite like that, but I can see why a lot of people, if that's what I'm getting, wouldn't like that because it's rough, I suppose. But
I think I'm almost sitting on Gregor's side here as well. Whereas, just for your last comment there, you said you've never had one that's blown you away. Similar, I've never had a Talkers that's blown me away, but I've never had one that I thought I'm not enjoying it. I don't like it. It's and you guys are probably looking at it. You want every cast to be like, wow, this is brilliant. Whereas Talkers just sits just below that line where I'm never going to turn it down, but it's a pleasant dram. It's nice. It's easy going, but yeah, it's not I've never had a showstopper of a Talkers.
Right, I will from now on. That's me, 3-1, outvoted, absolutely.
I'm with you. It's 2-all. It's 2-all.
No.
I'm with you.
All right, good.
I'm 100% Glen Talkers. I passed the distillery about 6 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I salute every time I go past. I like it.
It's one of those situations where, if we were in a room together right now, I'd be like, hang on a minute, I've got a good one, and go and pour you all a dram of it and change your minds, but you'll have to be with me on that one. But it just shows you, and again, 2-2, I suppose.
Hey, we've got somebody else online, John Hill was Molden, who's watching. I'm with Paul, big fan of Glen Talkers. Yeah, some of the DRC bottles are fantastic. Yeah, brilliant.
See if we were really up shit's creek, and I think I'd be a sign, and we'd be releasing like hogsheads of Glen Talkers at 10 years old. Then I think everyone should be like, oh, Lady of Glen's on their way out. What's that? Glen Talkers. Must be tough. Maybe.
We'll be for the Lady of Glen Talkers. Come on, everybody, let's get it up.
It'll either be really good or it'll be so mediocre you'll be like, aye, they're on their way out. That's it. It's hit the fan.
No, Russell, I'm just going to ask you, your whiskey collection behind you, how many bottles of Talkers have you got in there?
I've got 2, I think. I say maybe even three. Maybe even three. I'll go off screen and I'll be back. I'll be back.
I can't even think. I've got about 100 whiskies in this room. I don't think any of them.
You don't see my bum.
I hope it's not a Glen Tokers, because I did release a Glen Tokers years ago, but I think it was 15-year-old, so I give myself a bit of a break. It was aye. And that same outrun, I did a Clynelish as well, which was really good.
Oh, I love Clynelish Spirit. Just that real briny, say-like kind of flavour to it. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
My question is coming in. Are you seeing more Ben Nevis Spirit becoming available? I guess this is in relation to the change in the Japanese.
Ben Nevis is just like Glen Tokers. It's a fighting dram.
We'll have Ben Nevis in about. We do have Ben Nevis, but it's too young to sell. So there are younger casks, yeah, and we've got our Ben Nevis in sort of different styles of cask as well. So when we do eventually release it, it will be really good, and that's in line with what Ben Nevis does, because they're obviously a really good distillery. Paul's a big fan of Ben Nevis, so he'll be able to tell you more about it than me. But yeah.
Yeah, but I just love these old school distilleries and the quirky new makes that give us something really interesting to work with. You know the distilleries I'm talking about. There's plenty of good quality generic whiskey out there, but those quirky ones that give you something different. And Ben Nevis is one of those, and it's it's obviously one of these distilleries as well that splits a room, I think, and I can happily put my hand up and say that I've had some awful bottlings of Ben Nevis before, but some cracking ones. Very few in the middle. It's either really good or really bad. But it certainly gives us something interesting to work with. So yeah, if we get access to Ben Nevis, let's say Gregor mentioned we do have some, but it's too young just now, and I suppose that's in line with our policy that they're certainly buying for the future just now, as well as what's on the market just now. So again, that's a big part of growing the business going forward as well. So
it must be part of the decision making, where when a cask is ready, at what point do you think, right, it's ready, and you take that mark over, let's go another 6 months and see if it'll improve? Do you go through the same process for every cask? Do you look at every cask individually and think that needs a little bit more time? And how have you ever had a cask where you've delayed it too long and you thought, oh, we should have released that 6 months ago, it was perfect then?
Well, we've got a Strathmill actually, which is going to come out in the next outrun, which from a business perspective has been a bit of a nightmare, because we brought it into the warehouse for bottling. It wasn't really ready, so we sent it back. And then we thought, well, maybe it'll be ready now. So we brought it back. So it's already cost like double the transport costs, because we don't really mature our stock at the bottling hall. We just bring stuff in, and we kind of keep stuff there which is going to get bottled within like 6 months or something, or we re-rack it. So this Strathmill's come up and it's done a couple trips, and yeah, I'm not really sure if it's going to come out. We'll just see how it is in January. Really, it's a tricky one, but yeah, that's the advantage of the bottling hall, because I know in the past usually you sample it, and then you're like, yeah, that's good, we'll get it bottled, so you get it bottled. But as a bottling hall, you can be a bit more flexible. You can bring it up and you think, well, it needs a bit of work, we'll re-rack it in this, or well, we'll leave it a couple of months and see how it is. And that's probably why the releases of Lady of the Glen, in addition to Paul coming on board over the past 2 years, has probably been the best releases that we've ever done, because the whiskey is really bottled specifically because it's ready. I mean, I've always maintained that we've never bottled anything that's been there to make up the numbers in an outrun. That's never been the case. And our outruns have been
a few years back.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and the outruns are getting bigger, and we've reached a point now where we're probably gone as far as we can go with Lady of the Glen's casks per outrun. I think 10 casks, maybe 15 is as far as we feel comfortable releasing it and ensuring that the quality is there. So that's that's a limit. We're not going to be one of these independent bottlers that's going to be doing outruns every month or doing, because there's only two of us. We've only got a finite amount of capital and amount of casks and amount of time. So,
but from an indie company, and in terms of keeping the interest in things, I think if it gets too big, you get to a point where people maybe lose interest because there's too much coming out. Whereas if you've got the right size, people are eagerly waiting for it to come out. And would it be better for people to be eager and for things to sell quickly than to have lots out there and for it to sell slowly?
Well, obviously, from a capital perspective, you need it to sell quickly. But yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think as Gregor mentioned before, we're certainly growing, and the automatic thing to think to keep growing further is to bring out more casks, but because obviously you need more whiskey to sell, but at the same time, you will water down the offering, but both in terms of what you have on paper, the focus you can give, the attention you can give to each product, but there's also, as he alluded to as well, is keeping that quality. The growth, the rate of growth has provided a little bit of a problem, and it's gone from finding 5 good casks for each quarter to 10 good casks of the standard that we want to achieve. And I suppose we're not going to be shy in telling you we think we've managed to achieve that, but that's got a lot to do with the bottling hall. And I think touching on the point with the Strathmill, we're thinking that the more miles that it does on the road, the better it's going to mature. So we just keep driving it up and down the country in a lorry. It's the whole point of having the bottling hall, and I suppose it is quite unusual for a company of our size, to have that facility, because the automatic thing you think would be to outsource bottling, and of course that's what we did for basically the first 8 years of the business. But you get to a point where you want to be in more control, and it's not just in terms of being able to bottle the whiskey, but it's that control aspect over the casks, because at the end of the day, as an independent bottler, you can't necessarily control how the whiskey's produced, and obviously opportunities to buy new make these days is fairly limited, so you're looking to buy mature stock, and it's when you take ownership of the casks that's when you can control the destiny of those casks. And so having a facility where we can bring in the casks rather than relying on a sample being sent through the post, we can see the cask, we can work with it, work closely, and be more scrupulous with those decisions. And again, the Strathmill, I'm going to keep going back to that because it's a great point, because I think and Gregor hopefully will agree with me, but in the past, having pre-selected that cask for bottling, it probably would have just been bottled. But yet having the warehouse, having the facility, having the opportunity to try it again just to be sure, you can be confident in that decision. And at the same time, if we say, like we did, do you know what, disappointing as it is, that's not ready yet, then you've not lost too much other than, a few £100 on transport up and down the road. But at the end of the day, you've not forced yourself to bottle something that you know deep down is not ready yet. And so far, we've not had that problem. We've not lost any sleep over bottles being on the shelf that we wouldn't happily stand behind and put our name on it. So hopefully may that continue.
To be fair as well, the Strathmill should have been ready. It'd been in that port cask for bloody ages. Like it should have had some sort of port influence, and yet it's done a few trips now, and it's first. I think it's first or second fill, and it's all the other casks, they've done their job. This Strathmill's resistant. It's done its best.
There's a few questions coming in, but I'm just going to throw one in before I get to them. From the other side of it, I mean, I guess in the time that you've been running so far, have you ever got to a point with a cask where you've just realised it's actually just gone over, and you've had to maybe rescue it?
I've never really experienced that, to be honest. Okay. We've had casks that are maybe a bit woody. I mean, we had some a Bowmore last year, which was quite knackered. But yeah, we managed to find a solution for that, and we had some Jura as well, but it actually turned out really well. I've not had anything that's been over-egged.
You
But then I've
probably
not really bought
you're,
really
you're
whiskey.
waiting for it to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Because
mean, a
really
lot of
old
it's
whiskey costs a lot of money, so there's a lot of risk. So I probably wouldn't spend a lot of money on high risk whiskey.
Yeah.
a lot of it's to
So,
do with personal opinion as well. Some, you know, like you say, over oaked. You know, I think, unfortunately, Gregor and I have got different palates, you know, to the benefit of the selection, but we do agree on most things. And you know, someone's you know, heavily sherried Glendronach, for example, is the perfect dram, whereas it's not my go-to whiskey. I can certainly appreciate good whiskey, and there's certainly a time and place when you want something like that. But I suppose, you know, over the years, some of the whiskies that we've bottled from Octaves, you're obviously going to get a lot of wood influence quickly from them. So, you know, they are fun, and we're not stuck with too many bottles if it's not your thing. But you know, the whole idea of looking back and saying we should have bottled that six months ago, you know, you really would need a crystal ball and a time machine to fix that. But it's all educated guesses at the end of the day. You know, experience should hopefully come into it as well, to be able to allow us to assess a cask and say that needs to be bottled now, because if we do leave that 6 months, it's going to go downhill. And so, you know, experience should hopefully help with that. But you know, at the end of the day, it's what goes in the bottle is our personal taste as much as anything else. So,
which is one of the best things about independent companies. You know, we get to know you guys that are producing its kind of styles and flavour, and I think that's what the customers buy into, and that's what you're not getting from distillery releases. If you like, you're getting this uniqueness, which is fantastic. So, in terms of the Lady of the Glen story, Fiona is asking, where does the name Lady of the Glen come from?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Fiona, because it's not one that I've not answered before. I'm more than happy to go through it now, because I've not had any festivals this year to say it to anyone. So, Paul's the impulsive festival guy. Paul will probably tell you.
I've told the story about 10 times, but I've told it totally different each time. So you hear it from the horse's mouth now.
I've done enough business pitches to know this story off by heart. So yeah, even if it is made up, but which it isn't. So the actual story of Lady of the Glen, it comes from Stirling. So I went to uni in Stirling. I had a really good time there. Made some really good friends there. So the Lady of the Glen alludes to the Green Lady ghost that haunts the ramparts of Stirling Castle. So she was one of Mary Queen of Scots handmaidens, and she threw herself off the ramparts. I was going to call the whiskey Green Lady, but then I'd found out that green alludes to a very young whiskey, so I just went for Lady of the Glen. And I wanted to name the business after something I really cared about, so that's why I named it after my time at Stirling. It's the same reason with this isn't a plug, but this is sort of a plug. But we've got a couple of new brands coming out which are named after where our business is located now, which is in Dalgety Bay in Fife. So okay. I always think it's important to name something after something you care about, because it gives you that drive. Because for a long time, Lady of the Glen, as I mentioned at the start, it was hard. You know, there was no real money coming into it. You were always putting more money into it. You weren't drawing a salary. You were only ever buying casks when the money came in from the previous one. So it took a long time to get to a point where it was anything. And in order to carry that through, you have to really love what it is. So that's why I called it that.
I was going to say plug away. What are the new ventures?
So we've got a blend coming out called St. Bridget's Kirk, which that should be coming out possibly this year, maybe next. And we've got another brand coming out called Dalgety, which will come out next year, which will be single malt vatings.
Okay,
nice.
I think again, just before people get horrified by the B word and blend, we're not going down the Johnny Walker Red Label route. There's no space in the car park for a 10,000 litre blending vat, so we're deciding to do that in a kind of single cask format as well, and almost bespoke blends. So we're sticking whiskies together that we think will complement each other, and we'll try and be as transparent about that as possible. So, at the end of the day, the word blend is a bad word these days, but you forget about the roots of why it started and some of the craft that's involved. with that. So we're trying to kind of hone in and kind of focus on that.
You speak to some of the big guys, and I mean, like Charlie McLean. Charlie was one of our guests a few weeks ago, and he said a few times. Charlie drinks blends on a regular basis. This is a guy who's tasted probably all the best whiskey that is available, and it's a regular kind of blend that he goes to. So I think it is about saying to people there are lots and lots of really, really good blends, usually very affordable out there. And your nice single malts maybe more for a special occasion, but so yeah.
We've got the Gaelic on a comment there, and it's I would love to read it out, but my pronunciation is going to be absolutely awful. I assume it's for Lady of the Glen, Uan Glastic.
You might have just really offended someone there, Mike, for all you know.
Forgive me for it. It's so bad. I'm even scared to say the person's name.
I was always told to avoid Gaelic names just in case you offend, because apparently a lot of distillery names aren't really, translations from Gaelic. But that's just what I hear. Could be wrong. I don't speak Gaelic, so.
Okay, so that's apparently for Green Ghost. I always thought Bokken was Ghost because Bokken is named after the ghost dog. So, but there's maybe other names. We've got about a million names for hills in Scotland. So,
it's not like Eskimos have all those words for rain as well, and we've got
the word for snow or something like that. It's crazy. But, I just want to jump back. We've got a question from John Hill was Molden about when we're getting quarter four. We expect it next week. Would that be right? Is it next week we're?
Yeah. I should be up with it Friday or Saturday next week. I'm in the area, so the plan is to get those lovely drams out to you.
We'll write an email. So if you're not signed up to the shop email, if you sign up, you'll be one of the first to know.
Yeah, John's a big fan, so he'll be. I feel bad that he's missed out on anything that he wanted because he's a big fan. So, but you know where to get it. You know where to get it next week, and you know when.
So just on quarter four, I've just finished the canvas. I haven't finished it, Russell. Don't worry, I've left you a wee drop.
I've done the same for you. You've got a bit of the Glen Murray, so you're yeah.
A 1988, so it's only 5 years younger than me. 32-year-old, 44. Just a quick one. Paul's got the bottle there. Are all your natural cask strength? You don't add any water at all. They're all bottled natural cask strength. I know you can get cask strength where there's maybe been a wee splash added, but you release all natural, yeah.
Yeah, well, the canvas is especially, of course, you're drawn towards the strength there. Completely natural, and it's just one of these things where, the joys and wonders of single casks. And thinking back to that Bowmore, Gregor, it was part of the reason why we acquired the Bowmore, the Lafroig, and some other goodies, is because the owners maybe had a little fright and wanted to get rid of it before it went below 40. Of course, the magic strength for Scotch whisky. But no, that canvas is completely natural.
Beautiful. I've just written down just while we've been talking. That classic kind of grassy grain notes, lemon cheesecake, toffee, grapefruit, honeycomb, white chocolate, buttered biscuits. Just kind of as we go along. It's so easy. What a lovely drop. It's a really, really nice whiskey. I'm on the Elgin now, which is a Madeira finish. I'm guessing this Madeira is more of a dessert Madeira, because I know you get quite dry Madeira, which can give kind of smoky notes, kind of oaky notes. This one's, I've got kind of strawberries and cream in this one. Quite a nice sweet.
That's actually that's the first Madeira release I ever did. So,
okay.
The source of cask direct from Portugal. So, I was told by my distributor in Germany to not release Madeira casks. So, as you can tell, I'm not very good at listening to other people. So, fortunately, it's done quite well. Yeah.
It's lovely. It's nice. Yeah.
What to do with the Glen Elgin as well, being that super fruity make, and just wonderful to work with. I think even if it was a dry Madeira cask, it could cut through that. And it's a 13-year-old whiskey, and this is a 3-year period, and that's a long time. Again, terminology. Should we we try and get it shored up, because the word finish, to me anyway, and you can maybe argue this one all night, but to me a finish implies that in a matter of months time in the cask, whereas 3 years almost seems like a second maturation. Although I don't like using that in a word of double maturation and all that.
I had this discussion with Graham Cool from he's over in Ireland now, when he was at Glen Murray, and his idea of a finish is anything that's less than the initial maturation. So you could have an 8-year-old finished for 7 years. Was his kind of take on it. So I suppose everyone's got their.
But that has to be a second maturation. 8 and 7, you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a Bunnahabhain, obviously, a couple of runs ago.
I've seen one of those.
It was technically a finished whiskey, but I think it was re-racked. No, wait, it was an Inchmurrin. Was it an Inchmurrin, Paul? Was it Inchmurrin or Bunna? And it was re-racked like a few years after it was distilled. And yet we had to put down, obviously, re-racked. We couldn't put it down as fully matured. But the thing was, it was like syrup.
Yeah,
Inchmurrin's actually notoriously hard to shift, I find, as well. I always had a bit of a bad reputation. I think it was just my own opinion because Loch Lomond did so many different spirits that maybe it was they couldn't really do one. But I've really changed my view on Loch Lomond, especially since I've learned much more about the distillery and what they produced. The Inchmurrin we did, I've never had, I don't smoke, but the tobacco flavours that they got were just delicious off that Inchmurrin. Really, really impressive distillate and spirit, and I'm a big fan of Loch Lomond now and hoping to acquire more casks. The only problem is it's notoriously hard to export, I find.
We did a tasting with Loch Lomond. I think it was maybe the week before. You were with me, Paul, at the start of the year, and Michael Hendry came on to do it along with Gary.
He's a great guy.
Fantastic.
Did he do the slideshow and stuff?
He did slideshow, and it was a lot more hard going to begin with because so much information. But the more he spoke, the more you wanted to know. It was just incredible. And then, of course, the following week we had the Lady of the Glen and we had the Inchmurrin as part of the lineup, and I think we sold out that night of the Inchmurrin. But I'm the same as you, Gregor. I love Loch Lomond. I think it's fantastic, along with Glen Scotia. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier on, but there's certain distilleries that people form an opinion of, and whether it just be because someone handed you a particularly poor dram for whatever reason, but I think even Loch Lomond would put their hands up and say, 10 years ago, even less maybe, we were, or the people in charge at that time were not maybe taking the same care and attention as they are now. And Michael Henry, I think that must have been about 5 years ago at a whisky festival. I saw he was on the table. I was working that day as well, but I had a spare few minutes and made a beeline straight to the table and asked him, said, the Loch Lomond, the output, the bottling you guys are doing now is just, it's fantastic. It's night and day compared to what it used to be. Yeah. I said, what's happened? And as you know, he's a man of, he's straightforward, a man of few words, straight to the point. Aye, and he said to me, well, every warehouse in Scotland, every distillery, even the worst, will have good casks, and it's just a matter of selecting them. And I was like, yep, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. It's not like they've completely, refurbished the distillery and changed the way they make it. It's just about being more selective, paying more attention to your output. And fantastic, brilliant. And as an independent bottler, that helps us justify what we're doing, because again, that's the part that we have full control of, is that point of taking a cask and deciding to put your name on the bottle and say that it's of a standard that you would want to stand behind. So I think it might just be as simple as that, but obviously investment as well. But a fantastic place now, fantastic whiskey.
Very, very fruity. And talking about fruity, and Mike's mentioned the two that he's tried from the next release so far. I've had the Glen Murray, the Amarone, and I've had the Glen Lossie, and I've kept for you, Mike. So just red fruit abound. I mean, I feel like I've had a summer fruit pudding after my macaroni and cheese. Just fantastic. And I've just cracked open the Dufton that's in the Exiler octave. Really,
that one.
really interesting. Yeah, fantastic. Great.
This is where we can have some fun, you know. And again, the octaves not to be taken too seriously, because at the end of the day, you know, they are quite full on, and so it does allow us to, you know, without worrying about, you know, having too many bottles that might not be to everyone's taste. It just provides something unique and different. And again, our operation, the bottling hall, even to the point of saying the size of the company we are, you know, and the kind of world we operate in, it allows us to mess about with these things and have some fun. And the Dufftown is a perfect example of that. So I think we had a whole morning deciding what to label it as, because I think, if you know, and Gregor might correct me here, but it was an octave that was XPX that was freshly filled with Kalila. Then we bottled that Kalila and then put the Dufftown in there. So it should have a little bit of both the Islay, ex-Islay influence, and again, you know, try it, Russell. What do you think? Can you get any?
I love it. I absolutely love the nose. It's fantastic.
Is that the same Kalila PX that's in that run as well? Is that the same octave, or is this a different octave?
It just octave in the bottle.
I would love to say it was the same one, just to make it all join together nice and lovely. But to be honest, we've probably got about 6 Kalila octaves in the pipeline and various bottling, so probably not. And the fact that they're on the same outrun would suggest that no, because I think the Dufftown spent a good 6 months in the octave, so it's yeah.
We had the Ardmore just now, and Ardmore, I think, like Kalila, is one of these that you see a lot of independent bottlers use, and you know, very local to us. It's only about 20 minutes away from us at Connethman, and I think it's one of these spirits that we look at it being local. And I think it's a Scottish thing. You always think what's on your doorstep is going to be crap. You have to go further afield for good quality. And I don't think they do any justice to themselves with the supermarket legacy bottle. You see, when you get a single cask Ardmore, it's one of the best whiskies you can get. It's absolutely fantastic. We released one from the shop as an exclusive last year, and then we released an unpeated one called Drain. I love the sweet smoke that you get on an Ardmore. It's not like an Islay. A lot of people look at peat and they think, oh my God, it's going to be heavy tobacco, Islay, coastal. And it's so sweet. It's like toast. It's like burnt toast covered in butter. It's an absolutely beautiful. And I've just noticed it how we sit, but I'm getting all that really nice kind of cooked fruits from it. I love Ardmore in single cask form. I think it's a shame that they don't produce different expressions from the distillery.
I was furious to scribbling tasting notes there. They were wonderful tasting notes.
This is a really good example. Sorry.
I was just to say the Kalila. Carry on, Gregor.
I was going to say this Ardmore is a really, really good example of where Paul and I probably had different views, because Paul, when I said, Paul, what do you think? Should we release this Ardmore? Paul was like, yeah, Ardmore's good. It'll sell well. And I said, well, I don't know if it'll export well. I mean, I've had Ardmore before and it doesn't move and I'm going to be stuck with it. And Paul's like, if it tastes good, it'll work. So we bring it in, tasting it, and it's like, it's good. And Paul's like, I'm happy with that. And I was still thinking, I don't know if it'll export well. It's a hogshead. Should we do something with it? And Paul's uber confidence won the day that day, and that's why we've got this Ardmore on the market. And I've
also a nice affiliation with it because it's local to us, and we'll certainly push it. The only thing I would say is we've still got some of our own single cask Ardmore sitting there, so you might be comparing it. So it's a toss up between the two. I'm sorry, I'm going to push our own one first, but it's lovely. I love an Ardmore. Fiona's just popped on. I don't like burnt toast. Have you ever dipped burnt toast in whiskey? Yeah.
Is that not a sign of a stroke as well, having burnt toast now, is it?
Yeah, I was just going to ask this Dufftown being an ex-Kalila PX, was that a peated Kalila or non-peated?
Yeah, just a classic Kalila peated. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, I mean, to me, it's coming across like almost like a Loch Lomond, like in each one. It's got the peach, the mango, the pineapple, the tropical kind of fruits, but enhanced with that little bit of peat that you get from Loch Lomond. I always think that it's not the same, but the equivalent kind of idea where you put balsamic vinegar onto the strawberries to bring out the flavour in a kind of different way. And I think that's what Loch Lomond peat does to their distillate. It brings out the fruitiness in a different way. And this Dufton's coming across very much like that.
But I've got some bugs in the room here now.
Did you win your game? Did you win your game?
Yeah.
Yeah, good man. Well done.
You need to be like me, Paul. You need to nick some of the hair off of the young one and slap it on.
Oh, I remember it well, having hair. Too long ago.
It's not all this thing up to be. I'm 55 now, and I get a haircut every few weeks. It's a pain in the backside. It won't stop growing. I've got like Harry Potter here.
Like, you guys are taking over now. I'm going away. These guys are going to take over. Okay.
Yay!
Yeah.
Good stuff. You tell us all about Lady the Glen.
You tell us about your favourite whiskey.
I don't even drink whiskey.
You don't drink whiskey. What's your favourite drink?
Water.
Water.
Well, whiskey's just water with barley and yeast in it. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's just flavoured with water.
Right.
What game were you playing tonight?
Minecraft.
Minecraft. Oh yeah.
Don't forget the game in survival.
Very good. Very good. The champion.
Fiona's asking you to give us the thumbs up. You give us the thumbs up.
Rock and roll.
There you go. Is that where that whole that dance thing started, wasn't it?
That was Fortnite.
Fortnite,
yeah.
I was going to get him to give us the dance.
Minecraft's like a building game. You build worlds and all that kind of stuff. I think, if I remember rightly.
See, I'm as down with the kids as you are.
It's like, I love it.
Is that your tea?
That's my dinner, and one of these days I'm going to actually have to eat it.
Daddy.
That's fantastic. Throughout the year, people have. There's all. I mean, you've probably seen it, Paul. There's when you're doing a tasting on Zoom and you've got a screen full of people. There's always somebody just munching away on something, and at some point, somebody will say, "Hey, Joe, what's that you're eating?" And and up becomes this plate of wonderful cheese and crackers, and the next thing, everybody disappears from the screen, and everybody comes back with loads of food. It's like, but I don't think we're all going to come back with plastic food tonight. Maybe that's.
It's also it's not a proper online event if you haven't got a kid or a pet or a
dog. I was looking at a dog. Yeah.
The joys of working from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have a private whiskey tasting, and we'd organised. So it was on from about 7 till 8:30, 7 till 9, and we'd organised an Asda shop from between 9 and 11. And the bastard turned up at about 7 o'clock, and we'd literally just started. I was like, I can't even not take it because it's got a frozen stuff. And I was like, I'm really sorry, guys, but I'm going to have to go and get the door because that's the shop. And the wife was away, so I was like, oh my god. And I'm sure we've all got some nightmare stories of. But that's probably the one where I had to down tools and go and put away the shopping before we were going back to the tasting.
Yeah, fantastic. I was just going to ask a question about back to the start of the whiskey days. What was your early memories of having a dram then, and was that a good experience or a bad experience?
I'll go first. Yeah, I mean, good experience because I'd already had all the bad experiences with the vodkas and the tequilas and all that. So that got all that out of the way. So it left the door open for whiskey. And you do hear people talk about whiskey and they can't even smell it now due to downing it as a kid when they were stealing it from their dad's cupboard. So it's definitely a thing. But no, for me, whiskey was always it was always something I enjoyed. I suppose the kind of patriotic side of me always wanted whiskey because it was my national drink, and so I always had a good respect for it. But it wasn't until going on holiday with my parents and visiting a distillery that kind of made me think about it. And it was Oban. I went to Oban, and we went on a tour. And the guy was just absolutely fantastic. He's just one of these, tour guides worth their weight in gold. You must know what I mean. They just live for the role. They're a character. Everyone's engaged in what they do. What every word they're hanging off. And then of course, therefore, the whiskey at the end of the tour just is the best thing you've ever tried in your life. And it's a wonderful thing. And I get caught up in that, and I thought this is something quite interesting, but never really took too much notice of it. And then went to a bar and had a glass of Lagavulin 16-year-old, and that was it. I was like, what is this? This is incredible. I have to know more. And it was as much the point because it was so different from what I thought whiskey was, and I thought, well, if that one's so different from the last one I tried, and there's hundreds out there, are they all different? Let's go west and find out. And it really took off from there, in terms of what I wanted to be as a learn more about whiskey and consider something that it would be my drink, my go-to drink. And of course, once you're in there, once you start learning about it, that's you hooked. And even 22 years later, I still haven't learned everything. I still haven't tried everything. So therefore, the journey continues. But I suppose motivation to get into the industry and to work in the industry again. The flip side of that wonderful tour experience I had at Oban was the other side of the coin, where I went on a tour, and nothing against the girl, but she was just a seasonal temp, doing a tour, doing a great job, but it was like reading off a script, no passion, no enthusiasm. And I went, hang on a minute, and it was one of the, I'm not going to name the distillery, of course, but it was one of the busy ones, on the main beat. So I was thinking, there must be thousands of people every week coming through here thinking this is how we talk about whiskey. And I thought, no, I need to be one of these people talking about whiskey, because I can do a better job, sort of thing. But as I say, nothing against her. She was just doing her job by the job's go.
You find that almost
Company process, yeah.
isn't it? That you're in, you get the facts, and you're out. Here's a dram. I've got to go and do the next tour, kind of thing. It's a shame that. Yeah. So, Gregor, what about yourself? I assume that the Piper kind of generations had something to play in you getting your first dram.
Yeah, like my dad, he used to get loads of bottles for piping at weddings and funerals and burn suppers. But to be honest, I wasn't really a huge fan. He did used to get really good whiskey. He was always a big Glen fan. So the first whiskey I ever tried was like just Dalwhinnie. I can't say that I was overawed by it, because I don't think anyone really enjoys their first lager with their first beer. And without wishing to just slag off the industry, I can't say that I enjoyed my first whiskey. And it did take a while to get into it. I have to say, like, if you ever look at the first releases I ever did with Lady of the Glen, there was never any peated releases, because I wasn't really a big fan of peated whiskey. So I would always just release stuff that I liked, because then I could sell it. But now I absolutely love peated whiskies. I absolutely adore Lagavulins, and I'll try as many as I can get. And it's my dream is to release a Lagavulin named cask. And yeah, obviously I wanted to get involved in the industry because I knew it was something specific to Scotland, and I was very attached to that. I wanted to do something that only I could get access to, and Scotch was that. So, but I don't really have a incredibly romantic story about whiskey. I grew into it, and my dad, he used to drink whiskey with iron brew, and that would be his thing. He'd have a bells with that, or he still doesn't like peaty whiskey. He still just loves Glenmorangie and like lighter Speyside ones, and he'll have it like as his first whiskey if he's having like an evening to himself, and then he'll go on to his whiskey and iron brew later on. And yeah, it's just that's his way of enjoying his dram. And I think I probably shot myself in the foot the first time I ever did a whiskey interview when I told that to Alwyn Gwilt when she used to do Miss Whiskey.
Yeah.
I came across as the most naive independent bottler on the planet, and I said, "Yeah, you can mix whiskey with iron brew. Sure, do it." Yeah, well, you live and learn, and yeah, I think I've probably made every mistake in the book when it comes to that. Yeah,
but you're still here. That's the main thing.
I mean, Glenlivet's are promoting cocktails, so I don't think we can. I mean, a Scottish cocktail, surely whiskey and iron brew. That's a Glasgow cocktail, surely.
It does work really well. I mean, rum and iron brew, it does work, and so does whiskey and iron brew.
Yeah, we used to we first went to the pub. Well, maybe not first went to the pub, maybe mid-20s. We would all start the night off with a homemade concoction we called a Patriot, and it was a 3/4 of a pint of Tennent's, a double grouse topped up with iron brew. I guarantee if we went back and tasted it now, it would be awful. But at the time, it just set you up for a brilliant night. It was absolutely.
It sounds like a swanky drink, Mike.
Swanky drink, yeah.
I remember when I was 21, my dad actually bought me a Antiquary, the 21, and it had a furry label, and I was thinking this must be pretty good stuff because it had like a felt label, and to be honest, it was totally wasted on me, and he'd spent a bit of money on that, and I'll always remember the Antiquary bottle because it was all like angles and stuff, and I always loved the branding of Scotch. I just thought, even though now, like when you look at brands, they're all trying to be contemporary. I quite liked the sort of hills and the stills, and there was something really traditional and Scottish about it. Funnily enough, I'm just going to hark back to what we were discussing about Ben Nevis, because from an outsider, Ben Nevis is probably what you expect the Scotch whisky industry to look like, because when they send you invoices, it's got like pictures of mountains and that on the invoices, and it comes off like a fax machine, and it melts your heart every time you get one, and you're like, this is so cute. Because it's like everyone else sends you PDFs, and Ben Nevis are sending you like bits of reams and that, and you can see all the holes, and they've just been coming. They're not joining us in the 21st century. They're quite happy, they've done it. They'll keep doing it the way they have, and some traditions just stay.
We're just talking about your dad there with his bells and iron brew. So John has asked if he's ever tried your own releases.
Well, obviously, every parent has to help their youngster's business. So he has bought a couple of bottles, but I don't think he's opened many of them. I do try and get him to open them, or give. Funnily enough, he came to the distillery. He came to the bottling hall, pick up casks, because he actually turns them into wee whiskey bars, because he's a joiner by trade. Okay. And I gave him some samples, and he texted me that evening. He's like, "These are awful strong, Greg. How much water are you meant to add to them?" I'm like, "No, that's cask strength. You're meant to just have them at that." And he's like, "Oh, I'll be wasted." So I don't know if he's. See the port casks. To be honest, he really likes when we do the port casks. But then, without wishing to sound big-headed, I think our tawny port casks are really, really good for anyone who's got a sweet tooth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the first lady, Glen, that I tried was a port cask, and it was at the Aberdeen Festival 18, maybe, and it was just the last dram of the night or the afternoon, and it just stuck. It stayed on the taste all the way home. It was absolutely brilliant. The great introduction for me to Lady of Glen. And it was a dram that made me think I need to get in touch with these guys and let's get that on the shelf. So
a lot of the feedback we get from the port casks we use is, hang on a minute, that's not what I expected. And I remember well, because it was not that long ago, 18 months ago, again, really working with some of the port casks that we have, and of course the fantastic little bodega cooperage over in Portugal called Josifer, that we work quite closely with, and the casks they provide us and are just awesome, really, really good, and really go against what you might think is a classic port finish. And I suppose a lot of people, their impressions will be formed by bigger producers, their generic port finished whiskies that are part of their core range. Great whiskies, but you're only human. You form an opinion of what a port cask can do. But I mean, from all the whiskies that I've tried over the years before joining Gregor, it really opened my eyes to what a good, really good quality port cask can do. And even focusing in on this outrun, for example, the Glen that was it Russell? Did you have that one earlier on? Yeah,
I did. Yes, yeah, fantastic.
So yeah, that's from a ruby port cask, and I think both Gregor and I, when we tried that, I can do better than that.
There you go. Lovely, nice colour. Lovely colour.
When we tried that, we both kind of looked at each other and thought, that's almost what we would expect from a tawny port cask, and not to suggest just because tawny port is a more premium product, therefore the whiskey coming from that cask is going to be better, but we usually get more of that full-on fruitiness, the chocolate style fruitiness from the tawny port cask, whereas the kind of red fruit, the berries, etc., from the ruby port casks. But the Glen has got both. I think it would have had that kind of red fruit, and it's evolved into the chocolatey richness as well. Yeah, and it's just really, if you like port casks, then certainly look at what we're producing, because it's slightly off piste, but ticking all the boxes at the same time.
Absolutely. Have you kept a sort of library of all the bottlings that you've had?
Yeah, we're legally obliged to keep one bottle of everything, so we can't sell everything out. So.
Unfortunately,
have you got it on display?
No, it's sitting above the office in various boxes marked duty paid.
So just if you read your own, or if you remember your own tweets. So in the last year,
prior to that as well. I've got, when I first started, I've got Little Mills and Caperdonics and Ben Nevis's and stuff like that. Because it's always nice to keep one.
Yeah.
So some cracking stats that you put up on Twitter from the over the last year of having the bottling hall. So can you remember how many feet? Can you remember how many Fiat 500s of liquid you filled the boot?
Well, I don't know if the guys were taking the piss with that one. I'm the one that drives the Fiat 500.
Really? I mean, what business owner, what business MD do you know still drives about in a Fiat 500?
with a boot sloshing full of whiskey.
It's a pretty fine part of Italian engineering. Yeah. To be fair, Abarths are the same. Abarths are pretty quick, and they use the same model as a Fiat 500. So,
I had a colleague. When I was nursing, I had a colleague who had a lease Fiat 500, and she came into the office one day with the door handle. So this is a brand new car, and she came into the office one day with the door handle in her hand. She said, "I don't think this is right."
My door handle isn't actually hanging off as well. I don't know how to fix it. It does need fixed. On another note as well, at least my car's got a spare tyre. I don't think cars nowadays, I think post 2019, they don't have spare tyres. So.
That's right, yeah.
Do you remember what the first bottle was under Lady of the Glen? What was the first release?
Yeah, it was an Invergordon. So I got an Invergordon cask and I got a Ben Rinnes cask at the same time. So they were actually released simultaneously. It's not a joke, but see, when I spoke to my accountant, when I spoke to the HMRC first, because to get set up and that, they said, well, if worst comes to worst, you can make a blend because you've got a really old grain and a single malt. And I said, right, yeah, but I kind of don't want to do that. And then when I spoke to my accountant with a business plan, he said, well, if worst comes to worst, you can just sit on loads of whiskey and you can just slowly drink it away. And I just thought, well, that it's not really what you want to hear for your accountant, but I guess when he's looking at minus £3,000 annual accounts, he's probably thought, well, maybe you should just give up the ghost now.
It's something to drown your sorrows with.
Oh, yeah. That's accountants for you. They're pretty miserable folk unless you're doing well, and then they're all about tax.
So John just asked about the legal requirement. In one bottle, does it have to be 170cl bottled as you have bottled it? So it'd have to be in the label and all that, or is it? Can it be a sample like that you can keep? Or
no, it's a 70cl. So it's a bit confusing because since we're in Fife, we actually have to obey like Fife food and drink laws as well. So they want you to keep a sample bottle back. So say there was glass in a bottle or something, or you tainted a bottle, then they've got the sample bottle and they can say, oh, well, look, there's glass in this one as well or something. And HMRC needs you to keep a sample bottle back as well. So we just combine that, and that's why we've got that.
okay.
All forms the pension pot at the end of the day for Gregor.
Pretty much, it's going to be the auction sites are going to be inundated.
And do you specifically keep bottle number 1 then?
No, we just keep one off. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't get too romantic about that. It's painful. It's painful to take away one bottle from. Obviously, we're dealing with individual casks, and you know sometimes we're disappointed by. We wanted more of that. That cask is really good, and we expected more from it. You know, and then here we are having this one bottle that we have to just sit in a box and get dusty. So we don't get too precious about it. It needs to be done. But you know, it's going to be fun. You know, in a few years when I can't, Gregor, can you remember? Is it 6 years you've got to keep them for, or something like that? That you've got to keep them. But after that period of time, going through those boxes, you know, for the memories, and of course, if we don't need to keep a hold of it anymore, then
Party.
Might be
I thought it was 3 years, to be honest. I could be wrong. I need to check. I mean, we've only been open a year, so it's not really something that I've not got the bunting out or anything like that just yet for years.
How much for a ticket to the Lady of the Glen Christmas party? Then we're definitely coming.
Well, funnily enough, you mentioned that, but because next year's a 10-year anniversary, I'm trying to have like some sort of Lady of the Glen whiskey festival. But it's taken a lot of planning, but I'm hoping to try and arrange something in the summer. I had loads of wild ideas, like, oh, we could do it on the Flying Scotsman, but apparently that costs $7,000 to rent.
Okay.
And then it'd take you to Aberdeen, and then everyone would get there and be like, right, now what? And be like, oh, well, now we need to go back. So just get back on the train. And it's just not, well, that's just not going to work. So if anyone's got any ideas for plans, it'd be good to hear them.
Get the join on to Inverurie. I'm not sure if the Scotsman will come through, but you get through to Inverurie. We'll put you up for the night.
Yeah.
I'll maybe get some caravans. I'll get a little rock up.
Oh boy, good stuff. So guys, just before we can, because that's an hour and a half we've been on. We kind of promised an hour. And thank you so much for kind of staying on a wee bit longer and sharing the stories. It always gets to the point where that first kind of 20 minutes seems to go forever, and we're kind of building up, and then the next hour just flies by. Just before we kind of say thanks very much, we've got John just snuck in a last minute question. So you've got an outrun of 57 bottles from an octave. Does that include the sample bottle? Or I think it would do, would it? If you say you've got whatever.
Yeah. So basically we have 56 to sell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So again, case in point, you know, how painful is that? It's you know, as small fractions as they are, it's still one less that we get to work with. But needs must. It's the joys of having your own bottle and haul. So
I've actually said to Paul a number of times, like, the thing about octaves is you don't actually make any proper money from them. They're more or less just just thought the passion projects, like the margin and all the effort that you make, it actually doesn't make much sense. But the flavors that you get and the experiences that you're able to share, they are really great. I mean, I've been doing octaves for about 4 years now, and people love them. And yeah, they're small batches, but they're really unique and special. But like I say, I mean, the actual turnover that you get for them, it doesn't make any business sense. But you know, who gets into independent bottling for business sense? So
it's certainly passion, isn't it? Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, like I suppose what Gregor's not saying as well is that, you know, we could and probably should, and if the accountant had anything to do with it, he would look at octaves and say, well, you're obviously going to up the margin on that to cover the cost and the effort. You know, the cost of the actual octave. You know, it's a quarter of the size of a barrel, but it doesn't cost any less than a barrel. But you get a quarter of the output from that barrel. So, you know, but we're not adding any market. It is, like Gregor said, just a bit of fun, a pet project. You know, it complements the outrun. The Duffton that we were talking about with Russell, that was it's exclusive to the UK. We bottled and I'm going to upset some proper UK sherry whiskey fans here, but we had a quarter cask, sister cask of this one that we put into an Oloroso quarter cask, and that all went to export. And so I wanted the octave bottled for the UK. It's not quite the same. It's more to my taste personally, and of course, as you know, a lot of fun as well. But of course, just such a small yield, we kept a whole lot for the UK.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good call. Good dram.
Yeah,
I look forward to trying that.
If there's any left,
Absolutely.
I mean,
You left some.
I have left you some, yeah.
Sorry, I remember that. Guys, really loved having you on. And I know, Gregor, you like to put Paul at the forefront of the kind of on-screen tastings and the promotion kind of thing. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and chat to us. It's been fantastic fun, and I can't wait to try the other half of the quarter four. But for the four I've tried, there is, and I'm just saying this because you guys are here. Such a variety, but all very, very good as well. So guys, look out for that. As Paul says, it should be with us next weekend. And if you're signed up to our email, you'll be the first to know and first to get your hands on them, unless you've already tried to buy from you guys direct, of course. So thanks very much, and it's been a pleasure to have you.
Can you just before we head off, guys, Gregor and Paul, just stay on screen a minute once we've gone off live, just a quick wee chat after.
Yeah, no problem at all. I look forward to seeing you next week in person. That's again, you know, my business card does say brand ambassador on it, but essentially you could have, you know, one of those comedy sketch when the bell comes out and it hits the floor of all the roles that I do. So, but and delivery guy is one of the roles, but that I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, the whole face-to-face thing's great.
Yeah,
I was going to pick that.
I'm just rubbing it in how much you had.
We were talking about how far the company has come. I was going to say, but you still got Paul as a part-time delivery driver as well. So you're all right there.
I know he needs to do driving because he can't make any coffee, as he alluded to before.
I like my coffee.
There's always wee bits, you know, coffee make just lying at the top. And
It's that foamy bit you should be more worried
Oh,
great again, guys. Thank you for kind of extending the hour. It's always a pleasure to get that little extra out of you, and I'm sure the guys at home have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, guys, and again, if you just joined in halfway through, remember you can jump on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. I don't know how YouTube works. I assume you can go in and watch on there later on. But if you
next week you're on your own, Mike.
Yes, next week.
You're on your
we've
own
got
with Mark, yeah.
got Mark Watt from Whisky, formerly Cadden Heads and former Aberdonian area. I think he grew up kind of up in this area, so we'll have some good chat with him. So join us next week. Russell's away sunning himself in the Isle of Skye next week.
Yeah,
so.
I'll be getting a tan, or a rain tan or something. How many different words is it the Eskimos have got for rain? I'll maybe come back with a few from Skye. But I'll be back the week after. I'll be back the week after when we're going to be talking rum with Jim Oliver, and Vic Cameron's going to join in that night as well. So we've got a few more weeks left, guys. So thanks for joining in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Cheers, guys. Sláinte mhath. And guys at home, have a good weekend. I hope we'll see you all very soon.
Sláinte.